The Covenant's elite hierarchy is really a machine for spending believers. A complex hierarchy exists, and at its most ceremonial peak sits the Arbiter rank, which hands its most devoted soldier armor stripped from someone else's body and calls it an honor. A miner gets blue armor, the weakest shield of any elite, and command of grunts and jackals on his first day out. That's why today I'm breaking down the major elite ranks and armor types and what climbing this ladder actually costs. Starting with the rank fan's mistake for cannon fodder, Miner. Give a fresh recruit blue armor, the weakest shield in the entire Sangheili arsenal, and a squad of aliens to command on his first day out. That's the Covenant's idea of an entry-level position. The blue harness marks the bottom of the elite hierarchy, and its energy shield projector is the thinnest of any rank in the lineup. Less coverage, less charge, less time between a shot landing and that shield collapsing. What the Miner loses in protection, the Covenant recovers in sheer volume, because these elites form the bulk of the Sangheili ground forces on any given battlefield. It is easy to write him off as filler, the same blue silhouette showing up wave after wave. That reading misses what the armor actually signs him up for. A Miner stands at the head of a squad of Ungoi and Kigyar, one elite directing several grunts and jackals through patrols and skirmishes, making the calls that keep the squad alive, or get it killed. Strip away the species, and the rank looks exactly like a junior NCO running a fire team. The guy who is not made captain yet, but already has soldiers answering to him. Getting bumped up to the next tier is not a reward for showing up on time. The Covenant tracks kills, survival, and demonstrated loyalty under fire, and those numbers are what decide who moves off the bottom rung. Somewhere out there, a Miner still in that first blue harness is watching grunts die around him and doing the math on how many more skirmishes stand between him and better gear. That is the trade the Covenant is already running before an elite has proven anything beyond staying alive. Hand him command, hand him the thinnest shield in the army, and see what he does with both. If that is the deal at the bottom, the real question is what gets asked of the elite who has already survived enough fights to earn a shield that actually holds. Major. Kill the Miner and a squad scatters. Kill the Major and the formation around him falters, like someone pulled a support beam out of a building mid-collapse. That reads less like an accident of gameplay balance and more like a deliberate reflection of the lore. Red marks a Sangheili who has survived the trials a blue armor junior soldier is still facing, and the armor upgrade reads like the Covenant's receipt for that survival. Stronger shield projectors, a more ornate helmet, a plasma rifle instead of the lighter weapons his juniors carry. Every piece of it carries a debt paid in bodies, his and everyone else's around him. The Miner commands one squad and answers to whoever outranks him. The Major commands squads, plural, plus whatever alien auxiliaries got attached to his formation that day, running platoon-level assaults instead of single skirmishes. That is a real jump in responsibility, coordinating multiple units under fire instead of just pointing one squad at a target and hoping. He is the color the Covenant hands out once the Sangheili has proven he can hold that coordination together, something that only gets tested when people around him die. Gameplay backs the lore up almost too literally. Shields that eat several extra shots before they crack. A weapon loadout a full tier above the troops elites. You feel the difference the moment you fight one, because the fight stops being about one gun and starts being about a formation that reacts to him, which is exactly why formations react to him. Nothing in the files confirms a formal chain of command collapsing on paper, but the pattern on the ground is hard to miss. Drop the Major first, and the Miners around him lose coordination fast, like the platoon's tactical sense lived in his head and nowhere else. Follow that thread and the Major starts looking less like a tougher soldier and more like the officer quietly running logistics and tactics, while someone above him gets credit for strategy. The debt the Miner took on just to get trusted with a plasma pistol has only grown heavier here, and the man carrying it now stands in the open where the enemy can see him, holding a formation together that starts to fall apart the moment he goes down. Every rank so far has fought that fight with both boots on solid ground, and the Covenant is about to prove that isn't the only ground it fights on. Ranger. Some elites get handed a rifle and a squad. Rangers get handed a thruster pack and shoved into the vacuum of space with orders to fight there. That is not a metaphor. Rangers are Sangheili specialists built for zero gravity and aerial combat, pulled entirely off the standard infantry ladder that gave us that blue-armored Miner commanding troops on day one. Where he climbs a chain of command, Rangers get strapped into a harness modified with maneuvering jets and thruster packs, then sent to fight across ship exteriors, station hulls, and the open dark between vessels. Picture the environment for a second. One wrong burst from that thruster pack and you are not retreating, you are drifting, and nothing is coming to get you back. Rangers do this on purpose. leaping off their own ships mid-battle to board enemy craft while completely untethered, trading solid ground for a straight fall into nothing if the jump goes wrong. Their armor runs white or pale, built around sealed helmets designed for visibility in an environment where a fogged visor kills you as surely as a plasma bolt. They fight at range with gear suited to floating combat: focus rifles, needle rifles, carbines, storm rifles, weapons that let them pick targets apart while spinning through three-dimensional space instead of walking a hallway. Here is where the latter stops behaving. Rank charts drop Rangers into their own specialist bracket alongside stealth elites, instead of slotting them cleanly under Major or Ultra. Some fans read their training and equipment as Major equivalent. Others place them higher, arguing that anyone deployed into an environment this lethal has earned ground between Major and Ultra. Nothing in Covenant documentation pins an exact number to the armor. The Covenant built an entire cast that fights in one of the most dangerous theaters in the war and never bothered writing down exactly where he stands among his own. That is the price of being useful in a place few others can survive. The honor, minus the paperwork that would make it official. Space at least lets you see the elite coming. The next specialists built their whole reputation on the opposite promise, that you never see them at all until the killing is already over. Stealth. A garrison can die without hearing a single shot. That's the entire point of a stealth elite, and it's the most unsettling job on this list. The white harness gives it away if you know what you're looking for. A combat suit retuned so the plates don't rattle and the outline doesn't shimmer wrong under active camo. Most soldiers never get the chance to notice. Stealth elites carry energy swords and plasma rifles built for one job: get close, kill fast, disappear before the body hits the ground. Their targets are command posts, supply depots, communication arrays, the exact assets that make a UNSC position function instead of just exist. Cut the head off a garrison before it knows it's in a fight, and the fight is already over. That's the nightmare version of this rank. A coordinated team of them, moving through a base in total silence, ending resistance before anyone gets a hand on a trigger. Some fans throw the word stealth at anything that turns invisible, but scripted camouflage moments in a single mission aren't the same thing as a dedicated stealth unit built around infiltration and sabotage as a full-time role. The distinction matters because one is a set piece, and the other is a standing military specialty the Covenant apparently trusts enough to operate unsupervised behind enemy lines. That trust is where this gets murky. Nowhere does the record slot stealth numerically against a Major, an Ultra, or the Covenant's other specialists. What's clear is the shape of the job itself, and the shape says everything. A minor gets handed troops on his first day and a title everyone can see. A stealth elite gets handed a blade, a camo field, and a mission that stays classified. One is trusted in public, the other is trusted in the dark, sent to do the kind of killing the Covenant keeps off the books. That's a different kind of faith than a rank insignia can measure, the kind reserved for Sangheili willing to vanish into a mission with no name and no witnesses. Killing quietly behind enemy lines is the version the record confirms. There's a colder rumor still whispered among fans that the same trust could be turned inward against any Sangheili whose secrets threaten the Covenant itself. Spec OPS. The Covenant built a unit whose job is boarding enemy ships one week and executing its own believers the next. That is the Spec Ops Elite, and the second half of that job description is the half the Covenant keeps quiet. They move in black or deep gray armor, plating suited for low visibility work in corridors and cargo holds, rather than open battlefields. Regular infantry gets bright ceremonial colors that mark rank, colors that likely serve morale too, the kind of paint job you'd expect to be admired on a parade ground. Spec Ops gets the opposite treatment entirely, coloring suited to fade into a ship's hull, where the actual mission happens, far from any crowd meant to be impressed. They deploy alongside Special Operations grunts, small task forces built for boarding actions, artifact recovery, and jobs regular infantry simply cannot run. The boarding actions are the easy part to justify. Recovering ancient Forerunner technology before an enemy crew can destroy it fits the Covenant's obsession with relics neatly, a mission the Prophets would eagerly approve. The unit's darker purpose shows itself in suppressing heretics. Spec Ops teams get sent after Sangheili who ask the wrong questions about the Prophet's promises, and containing information the Prophets deem sensitive is written directly into their mission profile. This is the same trusted violence that once looked like a stealth cloak against human Marines, now aimed inward at elites who served the Covenant for years before deciding they'd seen enough. Picture the Sangheili on the receiving end. He earned his place through combat, through faith, through the climb most elites make toward honor. A Spec Ops team arrives one night to silence him for doubting the wrong thing out loud, a debt collected quietly and permanently. Covenant record never lays out an exact numeric slot for Spec Ops against every other elite rank. The pattern in their deployments points somewhere specific. Consistently trusted above standard combat ranks like Major, consistently kept below the political weight carried by Zealots and Generals. That places them among the Covenant's most capable specialists, rather than its power brokers. Soldiers valued for what they can do quietly, rather than for what they can command loudly. So far, the latter has rewarded specialists by pulling them off the main path. The next elite climbed that main path all the way to the top of it, the highest a pure soldier can go before command stops being about fighting at all, Ultra. When an Ultra walks onto the field, the fight stops being a skirmish and becomes an operation. That white armor makes the promotion visible. It's thicker and more ornate than anything a Major wears, with resilience suited to the engagements that call for an Ultra. The implication is hard to miss. Command puts that armor on the Sangheili they expect to survive the worst. Ultras rank above Major and below General in the core infantry hierarchy, and they hold that spot for a reason. They command small-scale operations, holding a sector or clearing one outright, and they bring the tools to do it. Concussion rifles, fuel rod cannons, weapons built to break a fortified position rather than harass one. That loadout is the tell. A minor carries a plasma rifle and takes orders. An Ultra carries a fuel rod cannon and gives them, directing the minors and majors around him like pieces on a board he is personally responsible for winning. Multiple Ultras on one map can be read as the Covenant treating that location as a priority rather than a checkpoint. Nothing in canon states an internal deployment doctrine explaining exactly when Ultras get committed, but the pattern holds across the major engagements where one appears. Ultras show up when the stakes justify sending a proven commander instead of a disposable patrol. Read that pattern as the Covenant admitting, without saying it out loud, that this particular fight is one they cannot afford to lose. The white armor causes its own problems. Rangers wear white. Counselors wear white. Fans have long debated how to tell them apart from screenshots alone. The answer lives in context. Rangers carry jump packs and work airborne insertions. Counselors stand in temples and command centers unarmed or lightly armed, talking instead of fighting. An Ultra stands on open ground with a fuel rod cannon and a squad following his orders. Strip away the paint job and the behavior tells you everything the armor leaves unclear. Here's the part that stings if you've been tracking this Sangheili since he was a minor. Battlefield excellence, measured in kills and hours, and reinforced by the trust of higher officers, is what carries a Sangheili to Ultra. Ultra is the highest rank many Sangheili achieve through combat alone, with General above it in the infantry hierarchy. Beyond Ultra, the latter increasingly pulls candidates toward the religious zealot order and away from pure soldiering. Being the best pure soldier the army can produce turns out to be a narrower path. General sits above Ultra, while the rungs beyond increasingly demand religious and political dimensions, pulling an elite toward the altar and a different kind of master entirely, Zealot. An elite can max out his kill count, clear every sector the Covenant throws at him, and still hit a ceiling no blade can cut through. The Ultra rank tops out at pure combat mastery, and the latter simply stops rewarding it there, no matter how many skulls pile up behind him. Above that ceiling sits a rank that runs on a different fuel entirely, one that has nothing to do with the kill counter. Zealots wear golden combat harnesses layered with ornamentation that belongs to a tier no standard infantry rank reaches, marking them out on sight. The gold reads like a uniform of devotion, handed out, fans argue, for conviction as much as skill, a visible receipt for faith rather than a trophy case for wins. The formal rank charts place Zealots in a separate hierarchy sitting entirely above the infantry ladder, a structure that, in practice, rewards belief at least as much as body count. Zealots lead operations involving Forerunner artifacts and objectives the prophets consider doctrinally sacred, the exact missions where one wrong move could offend the entire religion. Fieldmaster and Field Marshal sit inside the same category, titles that hand a single Sangheili command over entire legions and whole campaign sectors. That's the number that proves what belief buys. Entire fronts of the war, placed under officers whose conviction in the Great Journey was beyond question. Fans still argue over whether Zealot describes a battlefield rank or a religious office, and the pattern leans hard toward an answer. Warrior and Priest seem to fuse into one title here, promoted onto artifact hunts again and again, as if the Covenant needs someone who won't hesitate near something holy. A Sangheili spends his whole career proving his blade is worthy, only to discover the rung above him is grating his soul instead. Faith opens a door that skill alone can't reach. Even the greatest of them, the Supreme Commander who leads whole fleets, rose through the Zealot Order, where faith and combat mastery were never fully separable. General. When a general shows up on a battlefield, the fight in front of you is one square on a map he is running across an entire theater. Every ultra barking orders nearby, every major holding a choke point, every minor dying in a trench somewhere off screen answers up the chain to this one elite. That is the scale a general operates at, and it is why the gold combat harness reads as the most imposing armor on the field before he even draws a weapon. In practice, the weapon spread often gives the rank away faster than the color. Fans who argue over gold-armored elites usually settle the question by looking at the loadout. Plasma rifles and energy swords are expected, concussion launchers, fuel rod guns, and plasma turrets are logistics decisions as much as combat ones. And someone has to authorize the supply lines that put heavy ordnance into a single elite's hands. That spread reflects a level of logistical trust reserved for a general, and it says the Covenant hands this Sangheili more firepower than most individual soldiers will ever carry. Trace the ladder back, and the pattern gets uglier. A minor gets handed command on his first campaign, and the thinking seems to be that a species this loyal doesn't need to be tested twice. By the time you reach General, that same loyalty has been rewarded with an operational theater, multiple ultras, and the deadliest weapons in the Covenant arsenal. Then it stops. A general can win every ground campaign in the war and still hit a wall baked into the Covenant structure. Land warfare has a ceiling, and for most Sangheili, this rank is the last stop before that ceiling hits. A Zealot-class field marshal sits above it with command over entire theaters and campaigns, but naval fleets and political office sit past even that, reserved for elites who serve the prophets in person rather than on a battlefield. For a Sangheili who has given his whole career to this ladder, that ceiling is where the first cracks in the meritocracy appear. Outside the regular infantry ladder entirely sits a different kind of posting, one measured by proximity instead of troop count, where the work is standing close enough to touch the beings who decide what the war is for. Honor Guard. Somewhere in Covenant space, there's an elite whose entire military achievement is standing next to a prophet and looking impressive while doing it. That's the job. That's the whole job. Honor Guards protect the prophets and the Empire's other top dignitaries, and the armor they wear makes the assignment obvious from 100 meters away. Crested helmets, layered ornamentation, red and glowing orange accents that read more like they were built for a throne room than a firefight. Every piece of it functions as a billboard. It exists to announce that this specific Sangheili has been cleared to stand within arm's reach of the beings who run the Covenant, fully armed, without anyone flinching. That clearance is the actual prize. A general leads legions and war hosts across entire star systems and might never share a room with a prophet in his whole career. An honor guard commands nobody, wins no campaigns, and is present for the most sensitive conversations at the top of the Empire. It's a promotion that trades scale for intimacy, and the Covenant hands it out sparingly. Honor guards work the political centers and the religious ceremonies, and their presence carries as much weight as their weapons do. Getting posted here means the prophets have decided your loyalty is no longer a question worth asking. In practice, that trust arguably places an honor guard above field commanders in prestige, even though he technically outranks nobody on paper. Proximity is the rank. Access is the currency. Remember the general who tops out commanding thousands and still can't buy a seat at this table. Fans often debate which ornate elite standing near a prophet actually holds the title, since ceremonial armor gets slapped on more than one kind of warrior. Nothing in canon lays out exactly where an honor guard sits against a zealot or a general on a formal chart. The pattern is strong enough to trust anyway. Access that close and permanent is reserved for warriors whose loyalty the prophets treat as unquestionable. Standing beside the Empire's rulers is one thing. There are over 200 ministers and commanders in existence who get to sit with them as equals and vote on what the whole Covenant does next. Counselor Sangheili High Counselors share the High Council with the San Shayum, together more than 200 seats, and every Sangheili who holds one of them can be replaced by a corpse count in a single night. That is the ceiling of the ladder. Counselors are members of the High Council, the body that actually runs Covenant policy, and they sit alongside minor prophets on that council, sharing legislative power with them. A Sangheili who reaches this rank becomes a legislator sitting beside the beings the entire Empire worships as living gods. The rank is political as well as military. Many counselors rose from high military posts, such as Evocatus, then exercised power in the chambers of high charity. You can spot one instantly. Counselors wear white harnesses under helmets built oversized and elaborate, nothing like the sleek combat headgear worn by zealots or generals. It is governing attire first, meant to be recognized in a chamber, though it is still combat-rated with shields and plating that rival the toughest battlefield harnesses. They still carry energy swords, carbines, plasma rifles, and beam rifles. In the chamber, though, the weapons are largely ceremonial. Real power there is the seat, and the seat is vanishingly rare. Sangheili and San Shayum together filled a high council of a couple hundred, spread across an empire of trillions. That ratio is the entire story of how narrow this ladder gets at the top, and that rarity is part of why the Purge lands so hard in the story. When the Great Schism hit, the prophets targeted a governing class concentrated enough to erase in one coordinated stroke. Counselors gathered in the same chambers, holding the same rank, sharing the same proximity that had made them powerful, gave the prophets a single night's worth of targets instead of a scattered war. Nothing in the record spells out the irony directly, but the same closeness that put them beside the prophets is what put them within reach of the prophets' knives. In that purge, the Sangheili lost their seats on the High Council, their voice in covenant government, overnight. There is one title left, and it belongs to no rung on this ladder at all. It is handed to elites who disgraced themselves often, but not always, after reaching the highest ranks. And the armor they receive is ancient, drawn from the mausoleum of the Arbiter, where the suits of the dead are kept. Arbiter. In this video's reading, every elite who ever climbed this ladder was chasing the same illusion, that enough loyalty eventually buys safety. The Arbiter is where that illusion dies, dressed in ancient armor and handed a mission with a very short life expectancy. The title goes to a high-ranking Sangheili who has already failed the prophets, and the failure is the qualification. A counselor spends a lifetime earning a seat beside the prophets, sharing the High Council while remaining subordinate to the hierarchs. The Arbiter takes that same rarefied officer and hands him a second chance built entirely out of penance. The armor makes the point louder than any speech could. It follows an ancient ceremonial design with multiple suits kept inside the mausoleum of the Arbiter and bestowed on each new holder according to his size. Some of that metal follows a pattern centuries or millennia old, so the wearer steps into a tradition older than the current Covenant crisis. Picture inheriting a soldier's medals and his casket in the same box. Only one Arbiter exists at any given moment. Zealot and Ranger get filled by dozens of qualified elites at once. The Arbiter is a single office, occupied by a single man, retired only when he dies, doing whatever the prophets pointed him at. Suicide missions, political assassinations, missions so dangerous and sensitive that the Arbiter's authority sits outside the ordinary rank structure. Read that arrangement as a controlled punishment, dressed as an elevation. The prophets reserve the role for high-ranking elites who have failed them, then give those disgraced warriors broad authority as their instruments. Rise far enough in the hierarchy and you become eligible for the ultimate mark of shame. Fall far enough and that shame gets handed to you wrapped in the Covenant's highest ceremonial language, so you accept it as a gift instead of recognizing it as a leash. Think back to that miner issuing orders on his first patrol, trusted with alien lives before he had earned a single kill. The counselor, granted a prophet's ear inside the chamber, still answers beneath the hierarchs. The pattern across those ranks is the video's argument. Each rung appears to reward devotion, while the Arbiter reveals the price attached to that devotion. In this reading, the armor becomes a bill, and it comes due through centuries of dead Arbiters, whose title the new holder now carries. A Sangheili reaching for this title can spend his career believing faith and skill lead somewhere better than a grave with a name still attached to a prophet's leash. The Covenant's rank ladder can be read as a climb toward that contradiction, where the Empire's most exalted warriors receive its strangest honor at the moment the prophets have decided to spend them. The title rises from the summit, then turns the summit into a sentence. The ladder ends with one living elite wearing history on his shoulders, carrying out orders that may kill him before the ceremony is even finished. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.